We started out as a university project in the University of Southern Denmark, researching how technology could empower patients with Parkinson's in a way that would solve several problems, both for the patients and for the caregivers. So in this case, the concept we came up with for the patients was a modular building block kind of system that was physical, that would have the patients build with the building blocks, connected to an application, so it's sort of like a serious gaming setting where the patient would play different tasks and challenges. We'd measure how their movement, how their dexterity changes over time, measuring the frequencies of the tremors, and we'll also measure their cognitive degeneration over time. So it kind of solved a lot of issues, training the patients, giving access to data for the doctors that wasn't available before. Yeah, back in 2013, that was like a crazy concept dream. And then throughout our studies at the university, it kind of grew into a company, into a proper product that's now nearing launch. But we made this famous pivot that every startup probably has to go through, is figuring out where's the right market fit for this, what we're doing. So now, instead of being a Parkinson's diagnosis tool, it's actually packaged as a smart toy for kids. So as a way to create a bridge between the digital world on the screen and the real physical world, where the kids create and play here in this world, and the screen is only there to guide the story and to kind of put up the setting for the game that the kids are playing. So we're kind of mixing the best of both worlds there. Initially we did give it up. We thought that we would never get to market with that kind of product. We had too much to develop, and also if you want to be a diagnosis device or anything that can be used by doctors, you need a lot of accreditation, white papers, clinical trials. So we figured that the road to market would be way too long for something like this. And this was in 2014 when the smart toys market was really taking off. Only last year, actually, it became like an official market segment. Up until then, it was just in the numbers, there was something going on in that space between gaming and physical toys that nobody had really identified yet. So we thought that, okay, we can scrap the medical device business and then go on as a toy. But as we've worked since then, it's kind of turned into this mission for us more than a product, about helping the world embrace play and realizing that play isn't just for kids, it's also for us, and it's for our parents, it's for all generations. And it's the best way to learn, it's the best way to keep the brain healthy. So it all of a sudden kind of made sense to us, like, oh, we can actually, we can start out with the toys, but then we can expand the brand to, instead of just being Play Dexter, it can be educational Dexter, it can be medical Dexter, it can be a platform that really grasps the entire brain throughout the whole life of a human being. And then we were like, whoa, this just became something completely different. Not just a hardware toy startup, but actually a life science company more. So we are 3 founders, and we're all interaction design engineers from the university. So we have a technical background, but it's based on user-centered design and understanding the real problems, and not just designing gadgets, but actually getting to the root of it. And I think we're about 8 now. We just got a new employee today, a graphical artist working on our games for future release in next year. So our background is not in business, it's not in toys, it's not in cognitive assessment. We purely had an idea about that it would maybe be possible to do technologically. And then we've sort of had to learn as we went along. And all the stuff that we didn't know about, get in the right kind of people. And for that, the university and this network around the university has been really great as well.
Yeah.
Actually, through one of the intros to some of the network around the university got us to Silicon Valley the first time back in 14. And as a direct sort of consequence of that is one of our American investors that kind of led an American group of investors now, angel investors into the company. First up was figuring out how should the structure even be. In the early days, we had playing around with the thought, since we were in the southern parts of Denmark, that we could do sort of a cross-border thing where we had a part of the company in Germany, a part of the company in Denmark, and it just made it immensely complex and not really doable. But then again, we also wanted to make the company ready to do what's known as a flip. We kind of had an idea that we were probably going to need to raise a lot of money as we go to market. And typical the venture funding might not be that diverse here in the Nordics and Scandinavia, and most of them look for companies that will go to the States, that will go out and raise a bigger round, because that's where the bigger exits are, and it's much more fun out there. So we wanted to prepare the company for that, but we had no idea how to do it. And I think the first guy we talked to back in 14, in the beginning of 14, right after we kind of finished the first semester project, after a couple of minutes, he just looked at us and said, "Guys, you have no idea about what you're doing. You gotta get smart on this, because I can't help you at this stage. You have you don't know where to go, what to do, how to set up the company. So you gotta do some homework." Which was kind of a bummer for us. We were flying on a cloud after getting a really great grade at the exam. So we were like, "Yeah, this is gonna be awesome." The first meeting is like, you have no idea about what you're doing. So again, here the network in the university helped us figure out not a proper business plan, but this business model canvas, figuring out what is really the key players, what is really going to drive the value in the company, and kind of get that into a map, which was completely foreign to us because none of us had that background. And we were fortunate enough to kind of do it as part of our education. So while we were continuing on our bachelor's, we could still work on the company as part of some of the classes, but also next to the classes. I mean, through the university in southern Denmark, there's it used to be this idea house, they called it, for sort of like incubating student startups. And as part of that, they started a project up called the Pro program that was focusing on student startups with growth potential. And we joined that, and it lasted for about a year, I think, which was every month or so a meeting with some of them business angels, but not in a position where they want to invest, but in a position where they want to get together, give really good feedback on your pitch, on your value proposition, on all of those things. And that helped us a lot to kind of shape the foundation of what is now Dexter. Obviously, as we've learned more and more, a lot of the things that they told us back then, where we thought that doesn't make sense at all, we kind of like, okay, all right, now we're starting to understand it. So yeah, mentorship in this Pro program. We received the Danish InnoBooster from the Innovation Fund, the small one of 500,000 kroner, to go out and get another employee and to do the first production runs of the prototypes to get us closer to a stage where we can start to test it in the market. I think that's actually a good structured way of doing it as it is. And the amounts of money is making a big difference, but in the long run, it's not a lot of money. But in the beginning, in the starting ages of the company, it is really a make or break kind of thing. Getting 500,000 kroner to go out and do some stuff that we really wanted was really good. I would say more on the banking side, it's been a really big issue because the inner booster is paid back after the fact that you spent the money. Yeah. So that kind of gave us a problem. There's nothing wrong, I think, with the instrument itself. It's more the way that it's deployed. Since it's such a small amount of money and it's so early in the process where you don't have sales yet, the banks are not willing to give you a credit against the 500,000. So if that could come along with some kind of assurance for the bank in a way that they can give you a credit for the 500,000 so you can start spending on it, or I don't know how that structure could be. Yeah. But in any way that we can spend the money and then get it without having to spend it ourselves first and then getting it back. At that stage, that was a big, that was a bit of annoyance.
Really good point.
Yeah, I mean, we managed it because we had raised some angel money that we were able to then set aside for this instead. But it meant that it did kind of put a damper on the things that we wanted to do with the angel money, because now all of a sudden we had to take 500,000 out of that and spend it on the things that we wanted to do with the inner booster. And then only after the inner booster is paid back, we can put it back into the plans that we wanted to do with the angel money. So it's slowing us down like half a year. On the one hand, the public money might look at the private money as having to cope with all the problems in a startup. And to some extent, yes, I guess they're right, but it really has to depend on sort of what is the target of this company. For us, a minimum viable product is to create something with electronics in it that we can do the absolute minimum of features that we need to learn sort of the next things that we need. So that's an expensive process. But if you create a new application for managing a kindergarten schedule, you might not be that investment intensive or cash burn intensive because it's a simpler product. So there I get it. If you got 500,000 kroner in private money to do an application that does a rather simple thing, you're like, okay, then you might not need maybe that public money, or in some other way, you could use that money then to do pilot projects with institutions or so. But for us, it's still about development and getting to actually being able to test a product. So it's at a different stage that we need that money compared to another kind of startup. But it's kind of being looked at as one type of startup, I'm guessing. I like that there's a focus on the different stages of the company. But I might actually prefer that we look at the different risks that we have to remove at the different stages. I would say product market fit and growth engine are like the two biggest risks that you need to address before you go into to scale up. Because if you don't have that figured out, your growth to scale is gonna look weird compared to what it might be supposed to. So helping founders figure out what risks is it that we need to work on to get us to a stage where we are fundable. How much money do we need to reach that stage? If it takes us 12 months to get there, how much money do we need to live every month? Can we fund ourselves? Can we, eat tuna and oatmeal for 12 months and then put everything into the company? If we can do that, then we maybe need $100,000 to get to that next stage of risk management. And that puts a valuation on your company. If you know how much you want to sell, if you want to sell 10% for $100,000, that gives you like $1 million pre-money valuation. which is another thing that co-founders should maybe learn a little more about, is your valuation has nothing to do with discounted future cash flow or EBITDA multiple or anything like that. It will later, because then you have revenue, then you have a proper business. But right now it's only a question about how much time do you need to get to the next level of risk, and how much are you willing to give up of your company. And that's what you need to raise, and that's your valuation. So I think the founders should be taught to focus a little more on that for the different stages. Because then you kind of start to create a financing plan for the next 3 or 4 years, and you get an idea about, okay, I finished fundraising now the angel round, the development is going in the right direction, and I know that in 12 months' time I'll be running out of money, which is for all intents and purposes okay, because we have a plan for what we need to do in those 12 months in order to raise our valuation. And then you can figure out if I need maybe $5 million to get to the next stage. How much of that can I fund with public money, and how much of that do I need to go out and grab from a new angel investor or in a seed round?
Yeah.
If you figure out that ratio, it might be easier to figure out, okay, in Denmark, for instance, there's the growth fund, and they put a gearing on a new investment. Oh, so you might even need to raise less angel money because you can now get a bigger portion in a depth financing, for instance, from. So I think focusing on risk and how much money you need to remove those risks will help founders kind of go through the different stages. Yeah, constantly poking questions, poking holes in the assumptions. Always questioning, what is the assumption behind your price point? Well, we feel that it's the right price. Well, that's an assumption, Figure it out, figure out how to test it. So in that mentoring process, I would say point maybe towards the tools that can help you solve the problems, and keep poking questions at the assumptions and trying to get to, in Lean, you kind of have this idea about the root cause analysis, like asking 5 whys. Why is your price like that? Well, it's because we think it is. Well, why do you think it is? Well, because I have a friend that bought it at that price. Well, why did your friend buy it? Well, because he knows me. Well, why does he know you? Well, he's a childhood friend. Okay, are your customers all going to be your childhood friend? No, they're not. Well, then you can't really use that for anything.
Yeah.
So poking questions. I think it is, and that's been part of our journey from the very first meeting, being told that we know nothing at all about the journey that we're about to go into, and then to now where we have kind of made a lot of mistakes, and everybody needs to do those mistakes. As long as you can somehow kind of fix it, or if you can build on top of it, it's okay to make those mistakes. It's actually okay to fail. Yeah. That's a really big thing. Fail fast, fail cheap, and then learn and get on with it.